Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Hoy. I'm an independent researcher, and I've done two videos so far: a climate engineering part one and part two. Shave the beard, so don't have that anymore. Well, what I want to talk about today is natural, immutable, inalienable rights. We're going to switch it up a little bit from climate engineering. We're going to talk about natural, inalienable, immutable birthrights, which is what every one of us truly has, and we're not acknowledging it, and we're in the same time participating in taking others' rights away from them, as well as giving up our own rights. It's a very complex situation. A lot of this is what surrounds what is called natural law. What is natural law? I first learned about natural law in Lysander Spooner's Unconstitutionality of Slavery. And Spooner talks about natural law as being a natural, immutable, universal law that exists in nature, that exists regardless of whether it's acknowledged or not. And the founding fathers knew about this. Founding fathers of our country knew about this. They talked about this in the Declaration of Independence and in the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They pointed out that these rights that they're listing are natural and they're inalienable and immutable, birthrights that really, in a sense, don't need to be written down. But thank God they at least wrote them down, because things would be a whole lot worse if they didn't. These rights that we have and don't acknowledge are what's putting us, human beings, in a terrible position here on this planet. And these rights translate to what's going on in our environment as well, which is total disaster. Our environment is in peril, and we're very much on the brink of destruction to this whole planet. So, like I said, natural law, it exists naturally, and all of these amendments in the Constitution, actually the first 8 amendments mainly in the Constitution, such as the First Amendment and the Second Amendment and so on, are based on these natural rights. And the problem is when we don't acknowledge these rights, when we give up our rights and try to take others' rights, we're only destroying ourselves. Hold on one second. Okay, we're still going. Just checking my, been having a little trouble. Don't have a lot of storage space on my phone, so I can never tell when it's cutting out on me. So far, we're still doing good. See, unfortunately, people think, as well as I used to think, as sad as it is, that rights are granted to us by other human beings, that certain human beings have the right to grant rights or take away rights. Many people don't understand that these natural birthrights exist inherently in nature and have nothing to do with, like when people think of nature, it has nothing to do with animals. This is about natural laws that human beings with the capability of higher level thinking must abide by in order to live in freedom and abide by the true laws of morality. This natural law has nothing to do with Darwinism and the pseudoscientific social Darwinism of the survival of the species. as far as human beings are concerned, applying it to human beings would be social Darwinism. Basically, certain types of people are meant to survive and others aren't. This is about morality. And Lysander Spooner talks about it in his book, The Unconstitutionality of Slavery. The Founding Fathers knew of these laws. The Founding Fathers knew these laws existed. And you search a lot of constitutions around the world, you'll see that many of these constitutions, these communist country constitutions, will list these natural rights, but then they'll say, in a way, can be revoked by government or whatever, and that's a complete falsehood. And unfortunately, here in this country, it doesn't say those things in our Constitution, to my knowledge. But we are foregoing our rights and we're taking others' rights. One example would be drug laws. Hold on, sorry, I gotta check. I'm still going. One example would be drug laws. See, people really don't understand what these drug laws are. Most people just think, well, I don't do those drugs, so it doesn't affect me. Yes, it does. See, when we allow human beings to make laws that tell us what we cannot put into our own bodies, or that we cannot possess something that is forbidden to put into our bodies, we cease to own our own bodies. Our bodies are owned now by whoever these enforcers of these laws are. And that's another key thing. Remember, anyone can make a law. A man-made law means nothing. What the problem is when people enforce it. That's when it becomes a problem. These drug laws, many people think, well, that only affects what would be called black people or Hispanics or something, and poor people, so I really don't care. But you see, the immense problem with this is that people, probably not even realizing it, but don't even realize that they're willing to give up ownership of their own body, because whether you use these drugs or not, if you approve of the enforcement of these laws, you're surrendering your ownership of your own body. Many people, that's where we're at, folks. We're at a point where people are willing to surrender ownership of their own bodies because they're so racist that they like to see others suffer. And I'm telling you, we're in a real bad spot, folks, because once we surrender ownership of our own bodies, we're done for. We're done for. And there's one other component of that surrendering of the body and the surrendering of our inalienable, immutable birthrights. Ownership of our own body is a birthright. No one has the right to tell us what we cannot put into it. And also, see, once you go down this road, now the next step is for individuals to make laws and individuals, their order followers, to enforce those laws, saying now there are certain things that we must put into our bodies. See, once we're already halfway there, we've already surrendered ownership of our own bodies as far as what we can't put into it. The next step is telling us what we have to put into our bodies. And once that happens, we're done. We're done. And I'm just going to be honest. If you're an enforcer of a law that violates these natural, inalienable birthrights that are described in the Bill of Rights, in the Constitution, you're committing a wrong action. You're committing an immoral action. And you're going against the law of the land. There it is. It's done. God damn it. Oh. No. Hold on. Sorry, folks. That was a phone call. I thought that kicked out of me, but it's going to probably kick out of me here any time now. So I want to try to hammer this home. Case in point with the telling us what we have to put into our bodies is these vaccines. And regardless of what you think about these vaccines, you got to look into the research. I would suggest looking up Gary Knoll, Sherry Tenpenny, Andrew Wakefield, to look into these vaccines and see what's really going on with these outbreaks and stuff like that. But wherever you stand with vaccines, I mean, I stand with truth. I stand with the objective truth. The point is, no one has the right to tell us what we can't put into our bodies and what we have to put into our bodies. That's the bottom line, folks. That's natural law. Those are natural laws. Our bodies are part of nature. Once we go down that road, surrendering complete and total ownership of our own bodies, whether it affects you or not, we're done. That's a little preview. I'm sure this is going to cut out on me on any minute. So I really have so much more to talk about. But that's my first start talking about natural law and these birthrights. And we could talk about what is a right and what is a wrong. And the big thing is the enforcement, folks. The enforcement of these laws. The lawmakers, which no human being has the right to make a law. Once again, the founding fathers wrote down these laws not because they were making them, because they knew of these esoteric truths and they just wrote them down so we would all know this. And of course, we don't follow it. But anyone can just make a law. No one has to follow it. But it's the enforcement. It's the enforcement that's the problem. So I'll be back to start talking more about this, because this needs to be talked about, because just as much as our environment, this all connects to the environment. But of course, no environment, no life on Earth. But what's going to lead us to the end of life on this planet is going to be foregoing our natural law rights. So I'll be back with more. Good luck.